Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our very first SuperCamp webinar. We're thrilled to be here with you this evening. And before we get started, just like to introduce myself. My name is Jake Smith. During the summer, I am a lead facilitator at some of our SuperCamp programs, leading them and working with students around the country. When I'm here during the year at Quantum Learning, I am a program developer, and I design some of the curriculum as well that we teach at SuperCamp.
And my name is Jeff Miller. During the summer, I'm also a lead facilitator. And during the year, I work as SuperCamp Programs Manager. I get to collaborate with Jake on developing the curriculum and training our staff in all of our new curriculum design. Let's begin by talking the purposes of this webinar. The first purpose of this webinar is simply to explain the why and how of SuperCamp. The second is to get excited about this opportunity that your son and daughter have this summer. And then finally, to answer any questions that you may have about our program.
So SuperCamp is an experiential learning program. So we thought rather than using some slides and just talking, we would do a small experience that would be beneficial for you in terms of learning a little bit more about how our program works and why it works. So imagine this. You are driving from your home to your office, the same commute you do every day. And you get to your office and you park in the parking lot and you sit there and you go, I have no memory, no recollection of that entire journey. Has that ever happened to you, Jeff?
On my way to work tonight.
It happens all the time. It happens to every one of us. So have you ever thought and wondered, why does that happen? Why don't I remember that commute? Well, the answer is actually foundational to what we do at SuperCamp. And it's because driving to work has become a habituated behavior. What that means is your brain has gotten so used to it. It knows you're going to take the same route every day that it just doesn't pay attention. It goes on autopilot. So that when we get to our office at the end of the journey, it's just not stored in our memory. So now let's take that to a school environment or to our home environment. So your son or daughter is studying. They have a big test coming up, and they go into their room. You know they're in there studying. They come on out, and you say, how's it going in there?
I read every single chapter 3 times for my test tomorrow.
Fantastic. Well, what did you read? What did you learn?
I don't remember any of it.
That's probably happened to you as well. Maybe either as the parent or as the learner when you yourself were in college or when you were in high school. You get done with all of the studying and you have no recollection of what it just is. It's the exact same scientific fact. It's that we have these habituated behaviors of reading, that we look down at a page, we know there's words on it, we're scanning our eyes over the words, but because we're on autopilot, because we're not thinking clearly about what it is we're reading, it just doesn't get stored. And so the scientific fact behind this is actually that there is no comprehension without picturing. It means that we're not thinking. And so that prefrontal cortex, which you see right on the screen in front of you, that prefrontal cortex right back here, this is the thinking part of our brain. This is higher order stuff. So if this isn't on, if this isn't functioning, none of that stuff gets stored. So again, this is one of those foundational facts of SuperCamp. And this is woven throughout the curriculum. We use this when we teach note-taking, when we teach speed reading, when we teach things as simple as communication skills. This is just one of those things that's woven into all of the curriculum that we do so that we can maximize the 7 or 10 days that we have with your son or daughter, so that no time is wasted and everything is on purpose.
Another fact about the brain is that it is built for survival. So think about your own experience as a learner. You go to class and it's time to raise your hand and respond to a question. Now, inside you may be thinking, I either know the answer and I don't. But the survival brain has its own other set of reflexes. It's paying attention to the risk and reward of that question and whether or not the response will pay off. Optimally looking for safety. So you may raise your hand and not know the answer, and fear or embarrassment may come up. And the brain does not want those things present. So what it does is it habituates a behavior surrounding to protecting itself in those future incidences. Since we know about the brain and we know it's built for survival, there's a point where the limbic system kicks in and prevents the prefrontal lobe or the prefrontal cortex to do its job, which is to take in new information and apply it. So in order to calm the limbic system, we have a lot of strategies that we've built into SuperCamp. One of the major strategies to calming that limbic system is known as home court advantage. And there are 3 essential elements to home court advantage. And the first is safety. It's allowing us to create an environment where the emotional, mental, and physical safety of your son or daughter is the maximum. And so one of the ways that we do that is we have a high staff-to-student ratio, making sure that there's a lot of involvement with our staff and your son or daughter. Other ways is that we design our program so that there are experiences before we learn anything, so that there's a common bond between the learners and there is not that much risk present as we're learning. Then we can take those situations back into our home environments with a practiced new sense of thriving versus surviving. The second element is known as support. And there are a lot of ways that we orchestrate support. The first is the training of our staff. Our staff go through 300 hours of training before they interact with your son or daughter. Not only do they know our curriculum, but they know a lot about the brain and how to keep a surviving brain placed into a thriving environment. And then finally, a sense of belonging. We purposefully orchestrate belonging from the moment your son or daughter steps onto a SuperCamp campus. We do that by greeting them the moment they arrive, by partnering them and placing them into their dorm room situation with somebody who's going through the exact same situation as them. And then finally, by creating a variety of ways that they can interact with a team of 10 to 12 members that also are learning in the same environment, learning how to not just survive, but to thrive. And then when they go back home, often these people become their web or their network of support, and that belonging can exist long and well after camp.
So that's just a slight taste of some of the reasons why SuperCamp works so well and why it's been an incredible program for the last 30 years or so. It's really great to hear it from us. It's even cooler to hear it from somebody who's been through the program and has actually graduated. So Jeff is going to take off, and we are going to bring on Samantha. So Samantha, we know that you've been to camp more than once, and actually the last time I saw you was when you graduated from camp at Berkeley, so it's so cool to be back here. You can wave to everybody at home. So tell us, where did you go to camp, and what were the years that you went?
I went to junior forum at Stanford, and then senior forum at Stanford, and senior forum again at Berkeley.
Very cool. So a big question we get from parents is, what's the difference that I'm going to see from when I drop my child off on day 1 to when I pick them up on day 7 or on day 10? So think about yourself and the characteristics of yourself as both a student and as a person before you went to camp the first time, and then how those characteristics change, or maybe even new characteristics when you came out on day 10.
The first time I went to camp, before I got there, I was really shy and I wasn't willing to put myself out there or make new friends or talk to people that much. And afterwards, I was really willing to step outside of my comfort zone and get to know new people and have those conversations with my family and my friends that I wasn't willing to before, and just be a whole new person.
Yeah. And then even the second time you came to senior forum, again, what were the characteristics before you went and the characteristics you came out of that second program?
Before my second time, I was more of a follower and a leader, and then after the second time at senior forum, being on LTRAC really helped me become more of a leader and learn some of those leadership skills.
So LTRAC, can you break it down for the parents what that means?
LTRAC, or Leadership Track, is like a program for returning students who want to come back to senior forum.
Yeah, and it was so cool to watch that happen over this last camp and really watch you step into yourself as a leader and mentor other campers. So I was a camper, which I think I mentioned at SuperCamp, and I haven't mentioned to all of you yet. Before I even got here and started working full-time, I was a super camper, and I did not want to go to camp at all. Was that the same for you, or were you really excited for it?
I did not want to go.
So my parents basically had to say, like, we're shoving you on a plane, you're going to Stanford. Same for you as well?
Yep.
Okay, so something in common there, definitely, and maybe some parents at home are having a little bit of a similar experience where their students are either reluctant or just don't know what they're getting into. So what might you say to somebody your age, you know, high school or even middle school, who just doesn't know that much about camp or is kind of reluctant to go?
I would just say to go into SuperCamp with an open mind, because the more you're willing to learn things, the more you'll get from the experience, and you'll get to enjoy SuperCamp.
Absolutely. Well, it's so cool seeing you again.
Yeah,
Thanks, and we'll see you soon. Take care, Samantha. So you heard it from Samantha, you heard it from us, and there's so much more that goes into the program that we're excited to share with you. But the whole purpose of this webinar is to open it up to you and find out what questions it is you have now that you've signed your child up for SuperCamp or maybe interested in doing so. So we had a couple of questions emailed to us. If you'd like to send us in a question right now, you can type it into that text box that's just below over in the corner. You only need to type it in once. It'll come into our end and we'll see it. And then as we get through them, it'll be displayed on the slide in front of you. So one that we already have is, will camp teach the kids how to get and stay focused? Yes. And definitely the way that SuperCamp is orchestrated is in a way that helps keep focus maximized. So the thing about school, or a lot of schools, is that students are expected to sit in class for anywhere from 45 minutes to sometimes 2 hours if they have a block schedule. And that's a lot of time for the brain to have to stay focused. Even as adults, there's numerous studies that show the brain can only really focus for a limited amount of time before it just needs a break. In class, that may be pulling out their cell phone and texting under the table. But at SuperCamp, we give breaks quite often. Our facilitators are trained at being able to read the room, to be able to see student engagement, and to say, okay, it looks like the group needs a break. Let's go out, let's burn off some steam, let's go hang out, throw some footballs around, whatever it is, so that we can maximize our journey. Again, we're also going to teach them how to manage time, how to be in class and take notes that keep the focus on the teacher, but also keep the brain engaged so that we don't have time to drift off. So whether it's note-taking or speed reading or any of our academic skills, they all sort of tie into that idea of focus. So thank you, Cindy, for your question.
Yeah. I would just add that there are some rules that govern how the brain maximizes its learning potential. And so by learning how to learn and learning how the brain works and operates, students will pick up the skills and strategies that are available to them in the classroom, at home before they study, that will maximize that learning focus and that learning potential.
All right, here we go. Wow, we are coming in hot. So Lisa Ross from Houston would like to know how SuperCamp is different from other academic programs. Last statistic I saw was that there are something like 12,000 summer camp programs in the United States. I would say about a third of which are academic in focus. A lot of summer camps have become sort of niche summer camps where there's art camp and horseback riding camp, and then there's sort of these broad academic programs. The reason why SuperCamp is so different, and we've been able to do a lot of research and even talk to students and parents from other programs. A lot of other programs, you'll do academics some of the time, you'll learn science, you'll learn math, you'll learn social studies, and then you may spend an entire half day going to the movies, going to a water park, taking a tour of the city, which are wonderful things. But again, we only have 7 or 10 days with your students, and we maximize the amount of time that we have with them. So for your students, there's not necessarily any field trips. However, everything we do in the main room is engaging and fully based on the fact that we want to maximize the learning that they have with us. So we have dense material. That means in 1 hour, we're going to cover a lot of things. And in 10 days, each day is 13 hours long, and we're covering a lot of things. And we are constantly on our feet, we're moving, it's fun, it's engaging. If you got a chance to talk to Samantha face-to-face, I'm sure she would tell you that she was engaged, hopefully the entire time. She's nodding her head over on the side for sure. What else do we have? Jennifer Keith from Cincinnati, what is the background of camp leaders? For example, are they college graduates? What a great question. So one of the roles that Jeff and I have is to hire the team leaders. Furthermore, our department as a whole, we hire the instructors, known as facilitators, and all of our office staff. So do you want to talk a little bit about the background of facilitators?
Absolutely. So for facilitators, the long and short of it is that every facilitator that we hire has a background in education. Whether they're teachers and classroom teachers, which a majority of our facilitators are, coming from a variety of classroom experiences, or they're getting degrees or advanced degrees in education. Those are ways that most educators find us and show their interest in becoming a facilitator. Once we interview them and they go through a day-long audition for us, where we're testing their ability, what do they add to our program, we then have the luxury of selecting the top candidates from around the nation to join us. And that's just the beginning of their training. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They then come to our headquarters in person, where we get to spend a weekend. First, getting to know our culture, learning about our environment, learning about our strategies, and that again is just the beginning. Then there is an additional 200-hour training where they get all of the ins and outs of not only how the brain works, how to facilitate, but the in-depth look at our curriculum. So our facilitators, again, before they reach are bringing their own educational backgrounds and their experiences working with youth, and then we're packaging that with what we do so well and that what we've cultivated over 31 years of practice.
And my favorite part of that facilitator training is they actually sit and watch an entire SuperCamp, all 10 days from start to finish, watch the facilitators, watch what they do and why they do it, interview the kids, find out what's working, what they would change, just get a full picture before they're ever allowed to step foot in front of your son or daughter on a SuperCamp stage. Finally, as the other part of that, all of our team leaders, the camp counselors who are directly interacting with your sons or daughters, they are, for the most part, are college students right now. They are incredible role models. They go through an intensive, not only interview process, but training as well. And they come from the most prestigious colleges to hopefully inspire your sons or daughters to want to go for those colleges as well. Thank you for the question. Angela from Orange County, how do you address the teenagers that are not only shy, but have an activity of, I don't want to do the activities? So it's funny because earlier I spoke about myself being a camper, myself not wanting to go to camp. I was living in Florida at the time. My parents said, you're going all the way to California to go to SuperCamp. You're not going to know anybody there. I was nervous to say the least. Was I shy? To some extent, I think. And when I got to camp, I didn't really talk to that many people. I would say I would have a little bit less of the open mind attitude that Samantha encouraged. And the first day, I think what really helped were my direct team leaders, the two people who were there to watch over me, and just saying, hey, we're here if you need us, kind of do your own thing. If you want us to introduce you to some people, let us know. If you just want your own space, that's cool too. And it was really nice to know that I had those people to depend on if I needed it. So the first 2 nights I kind of called home, I wasn't ready to tell my parents that I was actually enjoying it. So I said things like, oh yeah, it's okay, whatever. And then on the 3rd night, it was just to the point where I thought it was so great that I finally called home and said, this is fantastic, thank you so much for sending me. So I kind of had to put my ego aside. There are campers who say, you know what, I'm not really sure about this yet. And what's so great about our leaders is they simply say, great. We will try to encourage you as much as possible. Look, this is going to be really fun. Here's what's coming up next. Here's why you might like it. And if you want your own space, that's cool too. However, know that the more you have an open mind, the more you're going to get out of the program. And by day 3 or 4, I'm sure you can attest to this, Jeff, all students have come around and are ready to engage in the program, if not a lot earlier.
The design of the program is so that days 1 and 2 are focused on that home court advantage.
Exactly.
Building that support system, building that sense of belonging. All of the activities at that point are about building camaraderie and a sense of team. And then the support that is gained there then allows us to get into those academic skills, the life skills. And then as those progress, as camp goes on, there are a lot of time spent on communication and then building, once the brain again is out of that survival instinct of I'm in a new environment and I have no idea what's going on, to thriving. What can I do now? And the end product of all of this is a sense of trust. Not only trusting themselves and their own ability to participate and show up big and contribute, because we acknowledge every effort that a camper makes, whether that's an apprehensive one to begin with or an all-in gung-ho effort. By honoring who they are, they can build that sense of trust in self and then have that family of support in addition.
Thank you for the question. Al from Germantown, Wisconsin, what can I tell my son and daughter about fun that will be had at SuperCamp? It's funny because we've been sitting up here saying, well, we're going to learn about learning, and we're going to learn about how to do well in school, and we're going to learn about motivation. And I'm sure if I were a teenager sitting there, or when I was a teenager sitting there, I'm like, okay, that doesn't really sound all that fun. I want to go have fun. It's my summer. And when a lot of students show up at camp, they immediately, are greeted by our staff, and our staff say, well, what do you know about SuperCamp? What did your parents tell you? And they go, well, I kind of heard it was academic, so I figured it was going to be like summer school. And what's so great is immediately we're jumping in. There's sports time in the afternoon for your students who are athletic. There's time for them to just hang out in the main room with all the new friends they've met. Furthermore, one of the parts or one of the events that I think most people look forward to is the Outdoor Adventure Day, which is where we leave the main part of campus. We either go to a different part of campus or even somewhere completely different. We're doing high ropes courses. We're doing low ropes activities, a ton of team building, climbing up 40-foot poles with harnesses on and jumping off, doing all sorts of different things that sort of challenge our trust. But if you've watched the SuperCamp DVD, I'm sure you've seen people climbing these huge structures and jumping off, having a lot of fun and jumping around. Yeah. Furthermore, we know a lot about the brain, and what's so great is I think a lot of the time students don't necessarily equate learning with fun. And one of the biggest end results of SuperCamp is that people actually leave going, I never realized I was a learning learner. I never realized I actually enjoyed learning. I always thought school was a chore, that learning was a chore. And it's because while we're learning at SuperCamp, there is a neurotransmitter called dopamine that is being injected into our brain because we're having so much fun while we learn. So when we're learning about note-taking, we're listening to music, we're engaging in games and activities and all sorts of fun things that are, of course, age-appropriate. We're not going to be playing, you know, like 3-year-old board games with a bunch of teenagers. It's going to be stuff that they're going to find fun and they're going to find engaging. But as they're having fun and learning about speed reading, it connects that fun with learning, the dopamine hits the brain, and it just goes, wow, this is a habit that I'd like to keep going.
And that's why the strategies are held on to for life.
Okay, these are coming through quick. What else do we got? John from Granada Hills, just up north of us here in San Diego. Will the camp help students improve test grades in school, and how? The short answer is yes. And if you take a look at our brochure, you'll see that SAT scores tend to jump by an average of 100 points just after one time at SuperCamp. We have a specific course in our senior forum program called SAT, ACT Preview, because those are usually the years when students need to start preparing for those tests. In junior forum, we have an area called Quantum Strategies, which focuses on test-taking skills. So in both areas, we focus a good amount on what it means to walk into a test, what a proper sort of study schedule looks like so that we're not cramming the night before. We're doing what's called circuit learning, which your students will find about, which is about maximizing the brain's potential and giving it a chance to sort of take in the information, let it digest, the next day review it again, take in a little bit more. So all of our strategies, again, are based on brain research that make it worthwhile for your student to study. And by studying the ways that we're going to provide them across the board, test scores tend to improve.
Yeah, I would just add that we have 7 or 10 days, depending on which camp your son or daughter is attending, to reinforce these strategies. So the point is by the time they return home, they've developed their own system, their own system that is catered to their brain to have them reach the maximum success that they wish to achieve.
Thank you for the question. Yeah. My son has been asking me where they go to sleep at night. So what's so interesting about SuperCamp, and when I first showed up, I'd been to some other summer camps, you know, sort of the more traditional, sleep in a cabin, be on the lake, those types of things. And SuperCamp is held smack dab in the middle of these college campuses. So when Samantha was at Berkeley, we were right on the Berkeley campus. There was concerts at the Greek Theater, you know, just a few streets down. There was the Quad just away. We were eating in the school cafeteria, and we sleep in the school dorms. So exactly where the students sleep, obviously they get cleaned in between when the year finishes up and when our students come to camp, but they're sleeping in the same dorms that students do during the year. So it's a very dorm-like setting. They tend to have 2 beds in them, so they'll have a roommate with some desks. But they don't really spend too much time in the dorms because we're having so much activity and so much fun during the day. But they are there, they're clean, they're nice, sometimes shared bathrooms, sometimes individual bathrooms, but everything you would need from a decent sleeping area. So thank you for the question. Thank you. Mahmoud from Maryland, how do you get the kids to maintain the skills they learn once they leave?
Great. We have a system of grad support. So first and foremost, while they're at camp, they have something that's called a playbook. And the playbook is where they are recording and interacting with the program. So as we're going through the curriculum and learning the strategies, they're recording and interacting with their playbook as reinforcement of everything that we're talking about in camp. And while it's great to have that at camp, the best part about the playbook is that when you take it home, you can review, go back, and even continue to fill in pages that are set up and designed so that you can reinforce as these situations come up in your academic or home life. And going back and reviewing that playbook was the first and foremost, like first line of defense in terms of remembering what happens at camp.
Furthermore, we provide online support for students. So we have a VIP section that your students will get a password to after they leave camp. In that section are things like video check-ins from the facilitator who is with them. So if I were leading the Stanford campus, your students who are at Stanford are going to be connected to me, not somebody who works here in the office. So they'll be doing video check-ins. Here's what's going on in my life. Make sure to remember to take notes this way, to use OTFD and 4-part apology. Don't worry, you'll find out what those are later on. And so we have sort of check-ins throughout the year. As well, we encourage students to keep in contact with each other. It's great if our instructors talk to your students. It's even better if they're talking to each other. I know before we got on camera, Samantha mentioned that she has lots of friends she made at camp. They still keep in touch. And I think it's even more impactful when I'm a super camper, Jeff's a super camper, and we call each other a couple months later and say, how's everything going? Like, are you still using those skills? And it's just a great one-to-one personal connection refresher. I think we have time for just a couple more questions, so thank you. Ooh. Here we go. Charles from the United States. Our son, who's 14 years old, is registered to come this summer. He's shy, reserved, and has low motivation, which has been affecting his grades. Is there any hope of this program giving him the impetus to wake up and be more involved with his future? I mean, absolutely yes. A lot of students we notice who come into SuperCamp are shy, they're reserved, they have low motivation, and those things, there's absolutely a brain-body connection and a brain and learning connection. If in our lives we don't feel fulfilled, or we feel shy, or we feel like we're not really motivated about school, that's absolutely going to show up in our studies. One affects the other, which is why at SuperCamp, when we're teaching how to learn, not what to learn, but how to learn and how to memorize, we're building confidence in school. That confidence in school then transfers over to confidence in life, because that means if I'm good at one thing, if I'm good over here and all of a sudden I'm getting great grades, I'm probably going to be more confident in other things. Maybe I'll start trying out for that sports team I want. Maybe I'll start trying out for theater or dance or the band. It's super tough. I remember, when you're a teenager, to simply sit there and try and look forward to my future and say, oh, I want to make sure I'm good in 8 or 10 years. But being at SuperCamp, when we're building the competence and the confidence in tandem, it just creates such a huge shift, or that impetus, as you mentioned, to move forward with our lives.
Yeah. And just think back to the survival brain. There may be habituated patterns that we were speaking of earlier that have developed in us as learners. And until we have an opportunity to kind of get pulled out of our normal academic environment and really explore and study, what is it like for me to learn as a learner? New potential and new possibility that we never thought existed is available to us. And as we develop those strategies, that's where the competence and confidence comes from. And then as you apply that and you have that system of support and others that are feeling that same exact way, other people on campus that you can connect to that are experiencing those same questions, that's where the power of this program, I think, really pays off.
Thank you for the question. This is our very last one. Randy from the United States, our son was hating us as we dropped him off, but by the second night he loved it. At the graduation, he didn't want to leave. It's not even a question, but that is so awesome to hear. We are thrilled that that sounds so similar to what we were just talking about. So thank you so much, Randy. So thank you so much for your questions, and please know that if you submitted a question, it didn't get answered here in the webinar, post this webinar over the next couple days. We'll be collecting all of these, and we'll send out an email to all of you that puts some answers to those other questions, just so you make sure your voices are being heard. Of course, you can always call our customer service and enrollments department at 800-285-3276. That number's on the website, supercamp.com, and we'll be sure to answer your questions.
Yeah. We just want to thank you and acknowledge you for the huge investment that you are making in your son or daughter's future. And we just are honored that you have had this time that you could spend with us.
Thank you.
We hope it was fruitful. And we have a couple more opportunities. So remember to join us for our upcoming webinars. The next one is on Tuesday, March 5th at the same time, here at 5:30 Pacific time. And we'll be talking about Super Biz Camp. That is one of our business specialized camps. And then Wednesday, March 6th at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time, we'll be talking about Leadership Forum and Quantum U, two other offerings that we have in our SuperCamp programming for college students and for students interested in their leadership potential.
Thanks again. Have a wonderful evening. Take care.